My wife betrayed me with my best friend in our own bed while I was away, and I saw the whole thing unfold on a baby monitor. What followed was a cold, calculated dismantling of their lives, my meticulous, satisfying revenge. The static on the screen finally cleared, just for a brief second. It was just a cheap video baby monitor, the kind we bought only last week. We weren't even pregnant yet, but Chloe, my beautiful, hyper-organized Chloe, was an obsessive planner. She wanted every detail perfect for when it finally happened. "Let's test it out, Leo," she'd suggested, her voice bubbling with that sweet enthusiasm I loved so much. "We can just point it at the living room from the nursery to check the signal strength." So we did, and then, naturally, we forgot about it. Mostly I forgot. I was completely buried in quarterly reports for the investment firm, the one I'd sweat and bled to build from scratch with my supposed best friend, Alex. Tonight, I was actually home early. A random, massive thunderstorm had knocked out the downtown power grid, shutting our office building down completely. I tried calling Chloe, but it went straight to voicemail. I figured she was still at yoga. I walked into the apartment. It was quiet and dark, the rain beating hard against the windows. I poured myself a drink, sank into my favorite worn leather chair, and then, for some reason, my eyes landed on the parent unit of the baby monitor on the end table. I hadn't even realized it was still turned on. The screen was just a fuzzy, gray snow of static. I picked it up, intending to switch it off, when the image suddenly flickered into life, and that was the exact moment my world officially ended. It wasn't pointed at the living room anymore. It was pointed directly at our bed. My bed. The signal was terrible, choppy and distorted, almost like something out of a low-budget horror film, but it was horrifyingly clear enough. Two bodies were tangled together in our expensive Egyptian cotton sheets. One of them was Chloe. My Chloe. Her head was thrown back hard, her blonde hair a wild mess against my pillow. And the other person wasn't some random stranger. It was Alex, my best friend since we were scrawny kids sneaking apples from Old Man Hemlock's orchard. My business partner. The best man at my wedding. He was on top of her. The monitor had zero sound, which, believe me, somehow made everything feel worse. It was a silent movie of my own personal apocalypse. I saw her hand, the one flashing the wedding ring I'd spent 3 months' salary on, digging into his back. I saw the look on her face, a look of raw, totally unbridled ecstasy that I hadn't seen in years. Not with me. This wasn't the look of someone making a mistake. It was the look of someone who was exactly where she wanted to be. My heart didn't just break. It literally just stopped beating. It felt like my entire circulatory system was flash-frozen solid. I couldn't manage to breathe. I couldn't think a single clear thought. The glass in my hand started shaking violently, the ice cubes rattling a frantic, tiny rhythm against the silence of the apartment. I kept watching for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 agonizing seconds. Every single movement, every silent gasp, every twist of their bodies was instantly seared into my brain like a hot branding iron. This wasn't some little slip-up. This wasn't just a drunken mistake. This was clearly practiced, familiar. The effortless way he moved, the way she instantly responded. They knew each other's bodies intimately. The thought hit me like a physical punch, knocking the last bit of air from my lungs. How long? How many times had this happened? How many late nights at the office was he actually not at the office? How many girls' nights out was she not with her girls at all? The fuzzy screen had become a terrifying portal straight into the cold, hard truth of my life. I was nothing more than a prop, a pathetic convenience. My entire marriage, my deepest friendship, it was all just a badly staged play. And I was the only idiot who didn't have the script. Something deep inside me fundamentally shifted. The shock, the ice in my veins, it didn't melt into sadness or overwhelming grief. It hardened. It crystallized into something cold, utterly sharp, and unbelievably heavy. It was rage, yes, but a quiet, intensely patient kind. The kind of rage a glacier feels as it slowly, relentlessly grinds a massive mountain down to dust. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to charge up the stairs and confront them. That's precisely what they would expect. A huge, dramatic scene, torrents of tears, furious accusations, a satisfyingly explosive end to their sick little game. No, they didn't deserve a quick, clean ending. They deserved to have their worlds meticulously dismantled, piece by piece, exactly as they had dismantled mine right in front of my eyes on a cheap, static-filled screen. I carefully placed the whiskey glass back on the table. My hand was suddenly, perfectly steady. I pulled out my phone, my fingers moving with a chilling precision I didn't know I possessed. I aimed the phone's camera at the monitor's screen, and I started recording. The quality was abysmal, grainy, blurry, silent, but it was totally undeniable. I recorded a full minute of their intimate betrayal. Then I saved the file, tucking it away deep in a secure cloud folder, a small, quiet digital hand grenade, just waiting for the exact right moment. Then I stood up, walked to the front door, and let myself out as silently as I had come in. I walked straight back out into the lashing rain, my expensive suit soaked through in seconds. I didn't feel the cold at all. I didn't even notice the water running down my face. I just walked. And as I walked through the massive storm, a plan began to form. A plan not for loud, violent revenge, but for a slow, meticulously executed, and utterly devastating annihilation. They genuinely believed they were building a perfect new life on the smoldering ruins of mine. They had no idea I was about to become the architect of their complete downfall. And I would build their prison using the very tools they had so carelessly handed me. Their unbridled greed, their shallow ambition, and their mountain of lies. The next few days felt like the performance of my entire life. I had to pretend like the world hadn't just ended on a Tuesday night. I finally went home hours later, faking total exhaustion from a long day at the office, which I claimed had only just gotten its power restored. Chloe was there, literally glowing. That really is the only word for it. She was radiant, softly humming to herself while she prepared a late dinner. The smell of garlic and basil, smells that used to feel like home, now churned my stomach. "Hey, babe," she said, turning to give me a quick kiss. Her lips felt soft. I felt nothing but overwhelming revulsion. I forced a tired smile. "Rough day?" "You have no idea," I muttered, the double meaning a private, bitter joke only I understood. She completely bought it. She happily chatted on about her day, specifically about a new collaboration for her lifestyle blog, The Gilded Life, which was absolutely her pride and joy. The whole thing was about curating this flawless image of effortless wealth and impeccable taste. She had a respectable following, but she was desperately pushing to break into the next tier, to finally become a real influencer. She talked excitedly about a potential sponsorship from some major luxury brand, her eyes sparkling with hope. Alex was saying he might be able to put in a good word, she mentioned, so casually, it was practically an art form. He knows the marketing director. "That's great, honey." I just nodded, my insides churning. Seeing Alex at work the next morning was the real, gut-wrenching test. He slapped me on the shoulder, a big phony grin plastered on his face. "Leo, my man, you look like you've seen a ghost." "Just tired. Long night," I replied, meeting his gaze directly. I searched his eyes hard for any flicker of guilt, any small sign of the man I once knew. There was absolutely nothing. Just the same old, sickeningly charismatic, supremely confident Alex. He was the flashy face of our firm, a master at schmoozing clients and always closing the big deals. I was the numbers guy, the essential strategist, the one who kept the engine running while he just polished the hood. We'd been the perfect team. Now I finally saw him for what he truly was, a parasite feeding off my work, my life, and my wife. "Well, buck up," he said, leaning against my desk, totally relaxed. "We've got that huge pitch with the Van Dorn account next week. This could be the one that puts us on the map for good." He was practically vibrating with nervous energy, the exact same energy I'd seen on the monitor. This was the flawless opening I needed. "About that," I said, keeping my voice completely level. "I've been running some new models. I think we're being way too conservative." This immediately got his full attention. Alex always loved risk, especially when it promised a big, flashy payoff. I was always the cautious one, the necessary hand on the brake. "I was thinking," I continued, pulling up a series of complex-looking charts on my screen. Charts I'd spent the entire previous night fabricating. "What if we heavily leverage the Clarion Holdings portfolio? We could potentially triple our proposed investment. The upside is absolutely astronomical. It's a bit of a maverick move, but if it pays off." I watched his eyes instantly light up. Greed. He was so completely predictable. He didn't actually understand the deep mechanics of the market like I did. He just saw the big, shiny number at the end. He didn't see the massive house of cards I was building into the very foundation of this proposal. Clarion Holdings was a classic bubble, a highly volatile tech stock pumped up purely on hype and reckless speculation. It was going to pop. I knew it in my bones. The real data, the data I had hidden away safely, screamed that it would. But the data I was showing Alex told a thrilling story of a rocket ship about to take off. "Leo, you magnificent bastard," he breathed out, staring transfixed at the projected profits. "This is absolutely brilliant. Why didn't you think of this sooner?" "Just needed a fresh perspective," I said, my voice completely deadpan. He spent the next hour talking excitedly about it, immediately taking my idea and making it entirely his own, spinning it into a grand narrative of his own genius. "I'll handle the pitch," he declared, puffing up his chest. "You've done the hard part, the numbers. I'll sell the dream." Perfect. He was attaching his name, his reputation, his very essence to this ticking time bomb, and I was going to gladly hand him the detonator. Phase 1 of the plan was now in motion, the professional annihilation of Alex. But that was only half of my revenge. Chloe required a completely different approach. Her currency wasn't primarily money. It was image, social status, the adoration of her followers. I needed to poison that well, but not by attacking her directly. I needed to give her exactly what she wanted, and then simply let her hang herself with it. A few nights later, I was scrolling through my old contacts. I stopped deliberately on a name, Julian Croft. Julian was an actor, a damn good one, but he'd never quite managed to make it big. He had the looks, the charm, but never the luck. We'd been college roommates for a year. Last I heard, he was doing dinner theater in New Jersey and waiting tables just to pay the rent. I made the call. "Leo? Leo Vance, is that really you?" Julian's voice was as smooth and theatrically charming as ever. We caught up briefly for a few minutes before I got straight to the point. "Julian, I have a proposition for you. It's a role, the best role of your life. And it pays well. Very, very well." I laid out the entire scenario. He would become Silas Blackwood, a reclusive, old-money European aristocrat looking to invest heavily in new American lifestyle brands. He had to be sophisticated, mysterious, and ridiculously wealthy. His target, Chloe's blog, The Gilded Life. "You want me to seduce your wife?" Julian asked, a note of sincere caution in his voice. "No," I corrected him sharply. "Nothing physical. I want you to seduce her ambition. Become her patron. Dangle the entire world in front of her. Private jets, utterly exclusive parties, a feature in Vogue. Make her truly believe she's finally hit the big time. That she's leaving her small-time life behind for something truly elite. I would fund the whole charade. The rented penthouse, the custom designer suits, the black car service, absolutely everything." Silas Blackwood had to be utterly convincing. "And the endgame?" Julian pressed. "The endgame," I said, a genuinely cold smile touching my lips for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, "is that you get her to invest. Not just her time, but her money. All of it. And then Silas Blackwood vanishes, along with every single penny." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then a slow, deep, appreciative chuckle. "Leo, my friend," Julian finally said, "you always were the clever one. When do I start?" The next month was a masterclass in total deception. On the surface, I played the part of the supportive, if slightly distant, husband. I acted like a man consumed by the biggest deal of his career, working late, endlessly poring over spreadsheets. This gave me the perfect cover to orchestrate my vicious two-front war. Alex was completely hooked. He had taken my fraudulent proposal and was running with it hard. He was aggressively whining and dining the Van Dorn executives, selling them on his visionary, high-risk, high-reward strategy. He was so incredibly high on his own supply that he didn't even notice I was subtly altering the company's digital records. I was creating a meticulous paper trail that made the entire Clarion Holdings investment look like his sole initiative. I fabricated fake emails from him to me, showing him rejecting my cautious, prudent advice. I created memos signed with a forged digital signature where he alone authorized the massive leveraging of our firm's assets. By the time I was finished, any auditor would conclude that Alex had gone rogue, drunk on ambition, and bet the entire company against the advice of his careful partner. Meanwhile, Silas Blackwood made his utterly grand entrance. He didn't just send Chloe an email. That would be far too common. He had a courier deliver a single, long-stem black rose to our apartment with a heavy, cream-colored card. The card read, "True elegance is not about being noticed. It is about being remembered. Your eye for it is remarkable. SB." Chloe was ecstatic. She spent hours trying to figure out who SB was. It was the mystery, the romance of it all, that hooked her before they even met in person. 2 days later, an invitation arrived. It was for an exclusive pop-up art gallery viewing. An event so secret it wasn't even mentioned in the society pages. I watched her get ready that night. She was electric with excitement, trying on 3 different dresses, agonizing over which shoes to wear. "I have to look perfect, Leo. This could be absolutely huge." "You look amazing, honey," I said, my voice feeling like a hollow echo in the room. She kissed me goodbye, a quick, preoccupied peck on the cheek, her mind already a million miles away in her fantasy world. Julian, as Silas, played his role to absolute perfection. He was waiting for her at the gallery, which I'd rented out for the night, and filled with art from a local college and a handful of paid extras to act as wrapped guests. He was the very epitome of old-world charm, kissing her hand, speaking in a faint, cultured, unplaceable European accent. He didn't just shower her with shallow compliments. Instead, he challenged her, critiqued her blog sharply, and told her she was playing a small game when she could own the whole casino. Chloe was utterly mesmerized. She came home that night practically walking on air. "Leo, you just won't believe it. He's incredible. He's talking about taking the Gilded Life global. He genuinely thinks I have the potential to be bigger than Goop. He wants to be my silent partner, my personal mentor." Over the next few weeks, Silas carefully cultivated her. He took her to dinners at restaurants so exclusive you literally needed a password to even get a table. He arranged for a chance encounter with a classless celebrity, another actor on my payroll, who gushed about being a huge fan of her blog. Every single experience was a meticulously crafted illusion, all designed to inflate her ego and her ambition until they were a giant, glittering bubble just waiting to burst. The affair with Alex, I noticed, began to cool off. Not because she felt any guilt, but simply because Chloe had found a much bigger, shinier fish. Alex, with his leased BMW and his constant talk of a single big score, was starting to look second-rate compared to Silas Blackwood and his effortless, limitless world of wealth. I'd see the deep frustration on Alex's face at the office. He was clearly losing his grip on her, and it was driving him absolutely crazy. He became even more obsessed with closing the Van Dorn deal, acting as if that money was the only thing that could possibly win her back. They were both my puppets, and they were dancing beautifully. Then came the first twist, one I truly hadn't planned for. Chloe sat me down one evening, her face uncharacteristically pale. She looked genuinely nervous, which was a change from her recent godlike confidence. "Leo, I have something I need to tell you," she said, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. My first thought, a stupid sliver of hope, was that she was going to confess. that the guilt had finally caught up with her. I was wrong. I'm pregnant, she whispered. The air instantly left the room. For a fleeting, tiny, stupid moment, a part of my heart lurched. This was what we'd wanted desperately for years. But then the cold, hard reality came crashing back in. I quickly did the math in my head, the dates, the timing. I hadn't touched her, not truly, in months. My performance as the loving husband had its limits. This baby wasn't mine. It was Alex's. I had to physically grip the arms of my chair to stop myself from reacting violently. I had to force my face into a mask of stunned, joyous disbelief. Pregnant? Chloe, that's incredible. I stood up and hugged her, my arms feeling like dead weight. I was holding my cheating wife, who was carrying my best friend's child, and I had to pretend it was the happiest day of my life. The irony was so thick it was suffocating me. This was the ultimate betrayal, a deeper, more profound cut than anything I'd witnessed on that monitor. And yet, as I held her, a new, darker layer of my plan began to solidify. This wasn't a setback. It was a spectacular opportunity. A glorious, terrible opportunity. Their perfect new life now had a powerful symbol, a child. A child conceived in deceit who they would soon believe was going to be born into a world of unimaginable wealth and success. The fall would be so much harder now. They wouldn't be falling alone. The pregnancy changed the dynamic completely. Alex was suddenly back in the picture, not as a lover, but as the concerned uncle. He and Chloe would have these hushed, intensely serious conversations when they thought I wasn't looking. They were definitely planning. They truly believed they were being so clever, deciding how and when to break the news to me, how to perfectly orchestrate the transition from their life with me to their new life together. They were just waiting for the Van Dorn deal to close. Once Alex was flush with cash, they would make their move. They would tell me the truth, or some highly sanitized version of it, and fully expect me to just crumble and step aside. Chloe, meanwhile, was even more invested in Silas's promises, a huge trust fund for the baby, private schools in Switzerland, a life she could only dream of. Silas, operating under my exact direction, became even more grandiose. He started talking about the final, essential step to secure their global partnership, to truly play in the big leagues. My dear Chloe, Julian's smooth voice told her over a speakerphone call that I was quietly monitoring. We must show that we are serious. We need to consolidate our assets. I am liquidating a significant portion of my European portfolio. I need you to do the same. We will create a new joint entity, a holding company for the Gilded Life and its future ventures. It must be a significant investment, a sign of faith. He demanded $500,000. It was a staggering, unthinkable amount, but he had groomed her so perfectly that it seemed like a logical, even exhilarating next step. He showed her forged bank statements, a portfolio of non-existent stocks, a whole universe of wealth that was tantalizingly just within her grasp. The one problem was that Chloe didn't actually have that kind of money. Her blog made a decent income, but nowhere near that. Her personal savings were modest, but I knew exactly where she would think to get the money. She came to me a few days later, her performance even more cloyingly sweet than usual. She talked about the baby, about our future, about securing a legacy for our family. Then she dropped the bomb. Leo, I need a loan, she said. It's for the blog. A massive expansion opportunity. It's a sure thing, but I need some liquid capital to get in on the ground floor. How much? I asked, keeping my face a perfect, empty blank. $500,000, she said, finally not meeting my eyes. She wanted me to simply hand her $500,000 of my money, the money I had earned through sheer hard work, the money I had planned for our real future, for a real child, so she could run away with my best friend after a fake millionaire conned her. The sheer audacity was absolutely breathtaking. Okay, I said easily. She blinked. Okay, just like that. You said it's a sure thing, I said with a careless shrug. I trust you. You're building a future for our family, right? I made the wire transfer that very afternoon, moving the money from my personal account straight into hers. It was the most satisfying check I had ever written in my life. I was personally paying for her ticket on the Titanic. The final, essential pieces were falling right into place. Alex was set to give the final Van Dorn presentation in 2 days. The next day, Chloe was scheduled to meet with Silas Blackwood's lawyers, 2 more paid actors in a rented office, to sign the final paperwork and wire her $500,000 into a shell corporation I had secretly set up in the Cayman Islands. Everything was perfectly synchronized. The collapse would be total and simultaneous. The morning of the Van Dorn presentation, Alex was a mess of nerves and pure adrenaline. He was pacing the office in his best suit, practicing his lines endlessly. This is it, Leo. After today, everything changes. I know, I said. You've got this. Chloe sent me a text message around noon. The meeting is done. It's all official. Silas is a dream. Celebrating with champagne tonight. Wish you could be here. Hugs and kisses. The money was gone from her account. My $500,000 was now sitting safely in my offshore account. Untraceable. The trap was perfectly set. All I had left to do was wait for the inevitable. The call came precisely at 4:15 p.m. It was from Robert Van Dorn himself. Alex was in the room pouring himself a premature, celebratory scotch. Assuming the call was to congratulate him, I put it on speaker. Mr. Vance, Van Dorn's voice was like ice. I've just had a team of forensic accountants thoroughly go through the proposal your partner, Mr. Knight, presented to us. I don't know what kind of game you people are playing, but my company absolutely does not invest in fantasy novels. Alex instantly froze, the glass halfway to his lips. The Clarion Holdings position is the most volatile, irresponsible asset I have seen in 20 years, Van Dorn continued, his voice now rising with furious anger. It's a house of cards, a Ponzi scheme waiting to happen. The fact that your firm would leverage its entire capital on it is not just reckless, it is utterly suicidal. We are not only passing on the deal, I am making it my personal mission to inform every major financial institution in this city that Vance Knight Capital is a toxic and fraudulent enterprise. You can consider your reputation and your company finished. Do not contact me again. He slammed the phone down. The silence in the office was absolute, suffocating. Alex stared at me, his face completely ashen. What? What did he mean? The numbers. You ran the numbers. I did, I said, my voice completely calm. I leaned back in my chair, totally relaxed. And the real numbers said Clarion was a dead dog. The numbers I showed you? Well, they told a much better story, didn't they? The horrible truth dawned on his face, slow and utterly horrifying. You set me up. You have no idea, I said simply. I swiveled my monitor around to face him. On the screen was a live feed from a security camera I had installed in the ceiling. It showed a team of auditors, real ones this time, sent from the State Financial Regulatory Board, meticulously combing through our files. I made an anonymous tip this morning about a partner who was engaged in reckless, unauthorized trading and falsifying documents to mislead his colleague. All those memos, the emails where you ignore my prudent advice, they're going to have an absolute field day with those. He just stood there, completely speechless, as the foundations of his world turned to dust right before his eyes. But why, Leo? What could possibly make you do this? And then I told him everything. I didn't shout. I spoke in a low, even tone, calmly describing a grainy, silent video playing on a baby monitor. I described the sight of him and my wife, naked in my bed. His face utterly crumbled. The arrogance, the confidence, it all drained away completely, leaving behind a pathetic, terrified little man. Leo, we were going to tell you eventually. I know, I said. After the Van Dorn money came in, after you had a nice soft landing pad built with my company's money. But you see, Alex, the thing about building on a faulty foundation is that everything eventually comes crashing down. As if on cue, the office door opened and two uniformed police officers walked in, accompanied by a man in a suit who flashed a detective's badge. Alex Knight, the detective stated, you're under arrest for securities fraud and embezzlement. They cuffed him easily. He didn't resist at all. He just kept staring at me, his eyes wide with a terrifying mixture of hatred and disbelief. As they led him away, he was still whispering the same word. Why? I just let him wonder. The professional annihilation was complete. Now it was time for the personal one. I went home. The apartment was dark except for a single lamp in the living room. Chloe was sitting alone on the sofa, a bottle of expensive champagne unopened on the coffee table beside her. She was staring blankly at her phone, her face a mask of absolute confusion and panic. His phone is off, she said, her voice trembling violently. Silas, his phone is disconnected. The law firm's number is out of service. The website for his company is gone. It's all gone. Yes, I said, walking over to her and slowly loosening my tie. It is. She looked up at me, and for the first time, she saw the look in my eyes, the cold, hard calm, the complete absence of the gullible, loving husband. And she knew immediately. Leo, what in God's name is going on? What's going on, Chloe? I said, sitting down in my leather chair, the exact one I was in when my world ended. Is that Silas Blackwood never actually existed? What's going on is that the $500,000 you took from me to build a new life is now sitting safely in my bank account in a country that genuinely doesn't care about your problems. What's going on is that your dream of the gilded life is completely over. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing uselessly, but no sound came out. And Alex, I continued, savoring every single word. Alex was just arrested. The company is finished. The Van Dorn deal, the one that was supposed to be his ticket to the big time, was a bomb I personally built, and he was dumb enough to light the fuse. The color drained completely from her face, leaving it a waxy, sickly white. You knew? She whispered, the words barely audible. You knew about us the whole time? I didn't bother to answer. Instead, I took out my phone, found the video file, and wirelessly cast it to the large television screen on the wall. The screen flickered to life, grainy, silent, horrifyingly familiar. She let out a sound, a choked, guttural sob, as she watched herself on the screen. She saw what I saw, the betrayal in all its silent, ugly glory. The baby, she gasped, her hand flying instinctively to her stomach. You knew about the baby too. Oh, I know it's not mine, if that's what you mean, I said flatly. And I know that the life of luxury you promised it is now gone. You have nothing left, Chloe. The blog is a joke. Your patron was a fiction. Your lover is currently on his way to prison. And your husband? Well, your husband is the man who just took everything from you, just like you tried to take everything from him. She started to cry then, horrible, racking sobs of pure despair. She desperately tried to plead, to explain. The words tumbled out. It was a mistake. I was confused. I still love you. All the pathetic, empty lies people tell when they've finally been caught. I didn't feel pity at all. I didn't even feel anger anymore. I just felt empty. A vast, clean, and utterly quiet emptiness. The storm was finally over. You have 1 hour to pack one bag and get out of my apartment, I said, my voice absolutely flat, devoid of feeling. Anything you leave behind will be thrown in the trash. Your lawyer can contact my lawyer about the divorce. There will be no spousal support. I have more than enough evidence of adultery and fraud to ensure that you're totally on your own. I stood up and walked toward the bedroom. I stopped at the door and looked back at her, a crumpled, weeping mess huddled on the sofa. She was the architect of her own destruction. I had simply drawn up the blueprints. You wanted a gilded life, Chloe, I said, my final words to her. Turns out it was just gold-plated, and the plating has definitely worn off. I closed the door gently, leaving her alone with the silent, looping image of her own betrayal playing on the screen. The aftermath wasn't a single, spectacular explosion, but a long, slow decay for them, and a meticulous, careful reconstruction for me. My revenge was never about one single moment of triumph, but about ensuring their ruin was as complete and enduring as their betrayal had been. Alex's legal case was a slam dunk. The paper trail I'd created was flawless. He was immediately portrayed in the media as a charismatic con man, a millennial Icarus who'd flown far too close to the sun on his partner's money. His desperate attempts to blame me were laughed right out of court. My testimony was calm, factual, and utterly devastating. I was seen as the stoic, betrayed partner who had courageously uncovered the fraud just in time. He was sentenced to 7 to 10 years in a medium-security federal prison. The last I saw of him, he was being led out of the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, his face completely hollowed out. The charismatic spark in his eyes was extinguished forever. He had lost his career, his freedom, and the woman for whom he'd thrown it all away. Chloe's fall was much quieter, but in many ways, it was far more brutal. The society pages that had once tentatively celebrated her rise now openly delighted in her spectacular crash. Anonymous tips, all from me, of course, leaked through a proxy, filling the gossip columns. Sensational stories of the fake aristocrat, the stolen money, the shocking affair with her husband's soon-to-be jailed business partner. The gilded life quickly became a public punchline. Her followers deserted her in droves, leaving behind a torrent of vicious comments. Her brand, her entire identity, was not just destroyed. It was turned into a widespread object of public ridicule. She tried to fight the divorce, but it was completely hopeless. The video, combined with the irrefutable evidence of her conspiracy to defraud me of $500,000, left her with absolutely nothing. No alimony, no settlement. She walked away with a single suitcase and the clothes on her back. Her parents, deeply ashamed and horrified, offered her a place to stay, but little sympathy. She was a total pariah. She had the baby, a little boy named Thomas. I never saw him, not once. He was the one truly innocent party in the whole sordid affair. And for his sake, I felt a deep pang of something that might have been sorrow, but he was ultimately her responsibility, the living symbol of her terrible choices. Months turned into years. I successfully liquidated what was left of Vance Knight Capital, paid off all the debts, and used my own protected capital, along with the $500,000 I had clawed back, to start a new, smaller, and much smarter consulting firm, entirely on my own. I built it slowly, carefully, on a solid foundation of integrity and caution. My reputation, far from being tarnished, was actually enhanced. I was seen as the smart survivor, the level-headed money man who had weathered a storm of intense betrayal. Success eventually came back, this time completely on my own terms. I didn't date. I just worked. I healed. I slowly learned to trust the comfortable silence of my apartment again. The ghosts of Chloe and Alex eventually faded, their power over me diminishing until they were just characters in a dark story I no longer needed to tell. Then, about 3 years after the divorce was finalized, I saw her again. I was in a dingy 24-hour diner on the edge of town at 2 o'clock in the morning, unable to sleep after a long flight back from a business trip in Asia. And there she was. She was a waitress. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe, greasy ponytail. Her face was pale and tired, etched with fine lines of stress that hadn't been there before. Her uniform was ill-fitting, stained with coffee. She moved with a weary slump, her feet dragging heavily as she refilled salt shakers. She didn't see me at all. I was just another anonymous customer sitting in a dark corner booth. I watched her for a few quiet minutes. This was the woman who had once dreamed of private jets and features in Vogue. The woman who had sneered at my stable, comfortable life as something provincial and small. Now she was serving lukewarm coffee to truck drivers for minimum wage plus tips. I felt a sudden, final, unexpected plot twist inside my own soul. I had expected to feel a surge of pure triumph, a final, deeply satisfying confirmation of my victory. I'd imagined this exact moment in some dark corner of my mind as the ultimate validation. But I felt nothing. No joy, no satisfaction, and definitely no pity. Just a profound and utter disconnect. The tired woman clearing away dirty plates was a complete stranger to me. The life she was living now had no bearing on mine whatsoever. My elaborate, All-consuming revenge had worked perfectly. It had brought her to this exact point. And in the end, it truly didn't matter one bit. The only thing that mattered was that I was finally, utterly free. My revenge hadn't just destroyed them. It had also powerfully cauterized a wound deep inside of me. It was a painful, brutal surgery, but it had successfully cut the cancer out. Watching her in that diner, I realized the revenge was never truly about punishing her or Alex. It was always about me. It was about me taking back absolute control. It was about me proving to myself that I was not a victim, but the undisputed master of my own fate. And now that it was finally done, the entire dark chapter felt meaningless. I left a $50 bill on the table for a $10 check and walked out without her ever knowing I was there. I never looked back once. A few more years passed. My new firm flourished beautifully. I eventually met someone special, Sarah. She was a landscape architect, a woman who created real beauty out of dirt and chaos. She was quiet, funny, and fiercely honest. Our relationship was built slowly, cautiously, on a foundation of shared values and mutual respect, not on grand, hollow promises. We bought a wonderful house in the country with a huge garden for her and a quiet, peaceful study for me. One day a letter arrived. It was postmarked from a small town in the Midwest I'd never heard of. The handwriting was vaguely familiar. It was from Chloe. It wasn't a pathetic plea for money or desperate forgiveness. It was short, just a few simple paragraphs. She wrote that her son, Thomas, was a good kid, bright and happy. She said she was working as a receptionist at a dental clinic and taking night classes in bookkeeping. She wrote that for a long time she had hated me, blamed me for absolutely everything. But she had slowly come to realize that I had only been a mirror, simply reflecting her own ugliness back at her. The last line of the letter was the one that truly stuck with me. You didn't destroy my life, Leo. You just forced me to start living a real one. I hope you are happy. You deserve to be. It was a strange kind of peace offering, one I never, ever expected. It was an admission not of guilt, but of consequence. She had finally, fully accepted the harsh reality she had created. I never heard anything about Alex again. I assume he served his time and faded into the anonymity he completely deserved. Sometimes late at night, when Sarah is sleeping peacefully beside me and the house is perfectly quiet, I think about that grainy, silent image on the baby monitor. I think about the man I was then, the man whose world was brutally shattered in that single moment. And I think about the man I became in the immediate aftermath, the cold, calculating architect of ruin. He feels like a total stranger to me now, a character I once reluctantly played in a very dark and complicated drama. My revenge was a complete success. It was total, it was devastating, and it achieved absolutely everything I set out to do. But the greatest victory was never their dramatic downfall. It was the moment I saw Chloe in that diner and felt nothing at all. It was the moment I could calmly read her letter and feel a sense of distant closure instead of renewed anger. The greatest victory was that I had managed to walk through that fire and come out the other side, not just unscathed, but fundamentally remade. They had tried to burn my world down, and instead, they had only succeeded in burning away the parts of my life that were never truly real to begin with. They left me with nothing but ashes, and from those ashes, I built an empire that was truly and completely my own. And in the quiet peace of that new world, I finally found what they had stolen from me. If you were Leo, knowing the baby wasn't yours, but was a symbol of their betrayal, would you have still ruined Chloe's life knowing it meant the child would be born into poverty instead of the luxury she had planned? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share your thoughts about this story in the comments.